Crime Chronicles Confidential, where every story is a mystery. This channel brings you thrilling crime stories, real-life mysteries, and cases that seem simple at first but unfold into something far more sinister. Every detail, every clue, and every suspect hides a deeper truth waiting to be uncovered. If you crave suspense, investigation, and gripping storytelling, then this channel is for you. Tonight, we bring you a murder that appeared ordinary at first glance. But as the investigation progressed, shocking secrets emerged, secrets that no one was prepared for. The door creaks open slowly. The dimly lit room is eerily silent, except for the soft hum of the ceiling fan. The furniture is undisturbed. The curtains are drawn, and nothing seems out of place, except for the lifeless body sprawled across the floor. The victim's eyes are wide open, frozen in fear. A single object lies nearby, still rocking slightly as if it had just fallen. The windows were locked from the inside. The door showed no signs of forced entry. There were no witnesses, yet everyone was a suspect. The crime scene presented a puzzle, one where every answer led to more questions. How did the killer escape without a trace? Was this a suicide, or was it staged to look like one? If no one entered or left, how did the victim die? The police arrive, and the investigation begins. Initial reports suggest no visible wounds, no signs of struggle, except for one peculiar mark on the victim's wrist, as if someone had forcefully held them down. The autopsy reveals something even stranger. The cause of death is unknown. Each suspect tells a different version of events. Each clue contradicts the last. As the pieces of this twisted puzzle fall into place, the truth only becomes more unsettling. The deeper the investigators dig, the more they realize that this is not just a murder. It is a message. Who wanted the victim dead? What secrets were they hiding? And the most chilling question of all, could the killer still be watching? This is not just another crime story. This is a mystery that will keep you guessing until the very end. Will the truth ever come to light? Or will this case remain an unsolved enigma, buried in the shadows forever? The room was sealed, the air heavy with an eerie silence. The door had not been forced open, and the windows were locked from the inside. Yet, in the center of the dimly lit space, a lifeless body lay motionless on the cold floor. The victim's eyes were wide open, frozen in an expression of terror, as if they had seen something horrifying in their final moments. Nothing in the room appeared disturbed. No signs of a struggle, no overturned furniture, no bloodstains. The only anomaly was an object lying a few inches from the body, still faintly rocking as if it had just been dropped. The air carried a strange, metallic scent, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. How did the victim die in a locked room with no way in or out? Had someone been inside and vanished without a trace? Or was there another explanation? Something beyond the ordinary? The silence was deafening. The shadows seemed to shift with every flicker of the dim light. This wasn't just a murder scene. It was a puzzle, a chilling riddle with pieces that refused to fit together. And somewhere in the unknown, the killer was still out there, watching. The discovery of the body sent shockwaves through the community. The circumstances surrounding the death were baffling. Was this a gruesome murder, or had the victim taken their own life? The locked room mystery only deepened the confusion. Police examined the scene meticulously. There were no weapons nearby, no bloodstains, no forced entry. The victim's body showed no visible wounds, no signs of struggle. The only unusual detail was a faint mark on the wrist, as if someone had gripped it tightly. Speculation spread like wildfire. Some believed it was suicide, perhaps poisoning, or something even more sinister. Others were convinced it was murder, a meticulously planned crime designed to leave no trace. The media fueled the hysteria, questioning how a person could die under such mysterious conditions. If it was suicide, where was the method? If it was murder, how did the killer escape an apparently sealed room? The case left everyone with more questions than answers. The police needed a breakthrough. An autopsy was ordered, but no one was prepared for what it would reveal. The truth was far more disturbing than anyone had imagined. The victim was finally identified. A man named Daniel Carter, for years old, a successful yet reserved individual with no apparent enemies. He lived alone in a quiet neighborhood, kept to himself, and had little social presence. To most, he was an ordinary man with an uneventful life. But as investigators dug deeper, they discovered that his past was anything but simple. Daniel was a financial consultant by profession, known for his sharp intellect and meticulous attention to detail. Colleagues described him as dedicated but distant, a man who rarely engaged in personal conversations. His neighbors barely knew him. His phone records showed minimal communication with friends or family. His bank records revealed nothing unusual, no sudden transfers, no suspicious activity. On the surface, there was no clear reason why someone would want him dead. But then, a closer look into his history revealed contradictions. There were gaps in his records, missing pieces in his story. Investigators uncovered a past that Daniel had carefully kept hidden, one that hinted at secrets he never wanted anyone to know. 10 years ago, he was involved in a lawsuit against a former employer, a high-profile financial firm that had been accused of embezzlement. Daniel had been a key witness, providing critical evidence that led to several high-ranking executives being arrested. After the trial, he abruptly changed his job, moved to a new city, and cut ties with almost everyone he knew. Had someone from his past finally caught up with him? Was this a revenge killing? Or was there something even deeper, something Daniel had been hiding all along? His apartment was thoroughly searched, but it was his personal study that raised the most questions. A locked drawer was forced open, revealing a hidden stash of old documents, some encrypted files on his computer, and a single, ominous note that read, "If something happens to me, it wasn't an accident." The note sent shivers down the investigators' spines. Daniel had known he was in danger, but from whom and why now? His identity was no longer a mystery, but the secrets surrounding his life and death were only beginning to unravel. The last call made by Daniel Carter became a crucial piece of the investigation. Phone records revealed that he had dialed a number just minutes before his death. The call lasted exactly minutes and 7 seconds, short, urgent, and unsettling. The number belonged to Ethan Reynolds, a private investigator. This revelation shocked the detectives. Why would Daniel be speaking to a private investigator just moments before his death? What was he trying to uncover? Or was he trying to protect himself? Investigators tracked down Ethan Reynolds, who was visibly shaken when questioned. He confirmed that Daniel had indeed called him that night, sounding panicked, paranoid, and out of breath. He told me, "They're coming for me. I don't have much time." Ethan tried to ask who they were, but before he could get a clear answer, the call suddenly cut off. No further attempt was made to call back. What had frightened Daniel so much? Had he discovered something moments before his death? Or had someone forced him to make that call as a desperate warning? The eerie part. Daniel's phone was found near his body, but the call log showed something disturbing. His last call had been deleted. Someone had tampered with the phone. The investigators were now certain. This was no accident, no suicide. Someone had been with Daniel in that room, ensuring that he wouldn't leave alive. But the biggest question remained. Who was they? And why did they want Daniel dead? The investigation quickly turned toward the last people who had come into contact with Daniel Carter. Surveillance footage, call logs, and witness statements helped the detectives create a timeline of his final hours. Among the people he interacted with, 3 individuals stood out, each with their own secrets, their own motives, and their own lies. Olivia Bennett, the ex-colleague, a former co-worker from Daniel's old financial firm. Olivia had once been a close associate. She left the company shortly after the scandal that Daniel had helped expose. Investigators discovered that she had tried to contact him multiple times in the weeks leading up to his death. Why? When questioned, Olivia appeared nervous. She admitted that she had met Daniel 2 days before his death in a quiet cafe outside the city. He was acting strange, paranoid, she said. He kept asking about something from the past. He thought someone was following him. But she refused to say what Daniel was looking for. Was she hiding something, or was she afraid of the same people who had targeted him? Mark Holloway, the business partner. Mark was Daniel's new business partner, someone he had trusted with financial dealings in recent years. But his records told a different story. Investigators found that Mark had been involved in fraudulent deals, and Daniel had recently uncovered irregularities in their accounts. Had Daniel confronted him? Mark claimed he hadn't seen Daniel for days, but surveillance footage told a different story. He had visited Daniel's apartment the night before the murder. He finally admitted, "Yes, I was there, but he was alive when I left. He was scared. He said he had found something he shouldn't have." Henry Dawson, the unknown visitor, perhaps the most mysterious figure, was a man caught on security footage entering Daniel's building an hour before his death, but never leaving. He wore a dark coat, a cap pulled low over his face. No one in Daniel's circle seemed to know him. He wasn't in Daniel's call records or emails. Yet he was there, right before the murder. Who was Henry Dawson, and why had his name never come up before? Each of these individuals had a connection to Daniel, and each had something to hide. But only one of them knew the full truth. The real question remained, was the killer among them, or was there someone else, lurking in the shadows, pulling the strings? Detectives turned to the most reliable witness, the security cameras. If someone had entered or exited Daniel Carter's apartment that night, the cameras would have captured it. Every second of footage was carefully reviewed, every frame scrutinized. And that's when they found it. At 9:04 p.m., exactly 13 minutes before Daniel's estimated time of death, the building's lobby camera recorded a tall figure in a dark coat and cap, walking toward the elevators. His face was obscured, his movements deliberate. He didn't hesitate, didn't look around. He knew exactly where he was going. 2 minutes later, the hallway camera on Daniel's floor showed the same figure standing outside his apartment. He knocked once, then waited. After a few seconds, the door opened just enough for him to slip inside. And then nothing. There was no footage of him ever leaving. The elevator camera showed no exit. The stairwell cameras never recorded him. Yet, when police arrived at the scene, the apartment was locked from the inside. The only person inside was Daniel, dead. Had the killer vanished into thin air? The footage raised more questions than it answered. Was there a blind spot, a hidden escape route, or was something more sinister at play? But then, the forensic team made another chilling discovery. Someone had tampered with the CCTV system. The footage wasn't entirely erased, but 4 crucial minutes were missing, the exact window of time in which the murder had likely occurred. Who had access to the system? Who had the skill to erase the evidence, yet leave just enough behind to confuse the investigators? One thing was now certain. This was no ordinary murder. Someone wanted the world to see part of the story, but not the whole truth. As investigators dug deeper into Daniel Carter's past, they uncovered secrets that even those closest to him never knew. On the surface, he was a quiet financial consultant, a man who lived alone and kept to himself. But beneath that ordinary facade, there was a trail of betrayal, deception, and unfinished business, enough to make anyone a target. A life of secrets. Daniel's personal records revealed something disturbing. He had changed his name twice in the last 15 years. Why would a man with no apparent enemies need to erase his past? What was he running from? Investigators found that years ago, Daniel had worked for a high-profile financial firm that was later exposed for fraud and money laundering. He had been one of the whistleblowers, testifying against some of the most powerful figures in the business. After the case, he disappeared, relocating under a new identity. Had someone from his past finally caught up with him? Unfinished business and a hidden threat. But there was more. Daniel had been secretly investigating someone in the weeks leading up to his death. His laptop contained encrypted files labeled with only initials. MH and HD investigators suspected these could be the people involved in his past, or new enemies he had made along the way. Emails recovered from his inbox showed that he had been trying to warn someone. In one of his last messages, he wrote, "I know what they did. I have proof. If anything happens to me, don't trust anyone." Who was he writing to? And what had he discovered that made him fear for his life? Was it personal? Or something bigger? Everything pointed to one possibility. This was not a random crime. Someone wanted Daniel silenced. Someone who knew him well enough to ensure that no evidence was left behind. Had Daniel uncovered something too dangerous? Was this an act of revenge from an old enemy? Or had he stepped into something far more dangerous than he had ever imagined? One thing was certain. Daniel Carter wasn't just a victim. He was part of a story that was far from over. As forensic experts combed through Daniel Carter's apartment, they found something deeply unsettling: marks, symbols, and signs that defied explanation. At first glance, the apartment seemed untouched. No signs of forced entry, no struggle, no overturned furniture. But beneath the surface, hidden in the details, were clues that pointed to something far more sinister. The mysterious handprint on the edge of Daniel's wooden desk. Investigators discovered a single handprint, smudged faint, but undeniably there. It wasn't Daniel's. The forensics team ran tests, yet no matches were found in any database. It was as if the print belonged to no one. The symbols on the wall. In the dim corner of the study, behind a shelf, they uncovered something even more chilling: scratched markings on the wall. At first, they seemed like random scratches, but upon closer inspection, they formed a series of cryptic symbols, drawn with something sharp, something deliberate. What did they mean? And more importantly, who had put them there? The chilling message on the mirror. In the bathroom, the mirror revealed yet another disturbing sign. Under special lighting, a sentence appeared, written in what seemed like invisible ink. He knew. Who was he? And what exactly did he know? Murder or something beyond? Every sign pointed to a well-planned crime, but something about these markings felt different. The police expected a killer covering their tracks, not someone leaving cryptic messages behind. Was Daniel's death part of a larger conspiracy? Had he stumbled upon something far more dangerous than financial fraud? Or was there another, more unexplainable force at play? One thing was clear: this wasn't just a murder scene. It was a message, a warning, and the real horror was yet to unfold. The forensic team worked tirelessly, analyzing every inch of evidence from the crime scene. The most crucial piece? The DNA report. If the killer had left even the slightest trace behind, science would uncover the truth. When the results finally came in, they sent a shockwave through the investigation. A DNA sample that shouldn't exist. Investigators found two distinct DNA samples at the crime scene, one belonging to Daniel Carter and the other to an unidentified individual. The second DNA strand did not match any known database records. No criminal records, no medical history, nothing. It was as if the person behind it didn't officially exist. But the most disturbing revelation was this: the DNA was incomplete. It contained traces of degradation, as if it belonged to someone who shouldn't be alive. The impossible blood sample. A faint bloodstain was found on the inside of Daniel's sleeve. It was too small to be seen with the naked eye, but under forensic analysis, it told a terrifying story. The blood contained anomalies, unusual cell structures that defied conventional human biology. Scientists were baffled. It wasn't the blood of a sick person. It wasn't contaminated. It was simply wrong. Did the killer leave a piece of themselves behind? Forensics confirmed one terrifying detail. The unknown DNA had been present in Daniel's apartment before. It was found on his books, his furniture, even on a pen he frequently used. Whoever this person was, they hadn't just killed Daniel. They had been watching him for a long time. Was this a human killer? Or something else? The DNA should have been the breakthrough detectives needed. Instead, it deepened the mystery. Who was the faceless figure in Daniel's last moments? Why was their DNA untraceable? Just when investigators thought they had hit a dead end, a new witness came forward. Someone who had seen something the night Daniel Carter was murdered. But there was a problem. He had remained silent all this time. The reluctant witness. The witness, a middle-aged janitor named Edward Mills, worked in the building and was on duty the night of the murder. He was hesitant to speak, visibly shaken, as if revealing what he knew could put his own life at risk. When detectives pressed him, he finally admitted, "I saw someone, but I don't think I was supposed to." What did he see? Edward had been cleaning the hallway around 9:40 p.m. when he noticed something strange outside Daniel's apartment. A man in a dark coat and cap was standing at the door. But what disturbed Edward was the way the man was standing, completely still, as if waiting for something. Edward assumed it was just a visitor and continued his work. But minutes later, when he turned back, something felt wrong. The man was gone, but the door was still slightly open. Edward felt uneasy, but he didn't investigate. "It wasn't my business," he muttered. Why did he stay silent? When detectives asked why he hadn't reported this earlier, Edward's response sent chills down their spines. Because the next morning, "I saw the man again. He wasn't in the apartment. He wasn't on the cameras. He was watching me." Edward was certain it was the same figure. He was standing across the street, staring directly at him. And then, in the blink of an eye, he vanished into the crowd. Who was the man? And why was he watching? The witness had seen something vital, something he was never meant to see. The figure wasn't just a killer. He was still out there, and he knew who had seen him. The investigation had reached a boiling point. Too many lies, too many contradictions. The police knew that the killer was someone close to the case. But who? After days of interrogations, inconsistencies, and hidden truths, detectives finally made their first arrest. But was it the real killer, or just another pawn in a much bigger game? The arrest, a carefully chosen fall guy? The man in handcuffs was Mark Holloway, Daniel Carter's business partner. The evidence against him was damning. Financial motive. Daniel had recently discovered fraud in their company. He had planned to expose it. If that happened, Mark would lose everything. Lying about his visit. Surveillance footage showed Mark visiting Daniel the night before the murder, something he initially denied. Erased messages. Digital forensics found deleted emails between Mark and Daniel, where Daniel accused him of corruption. When confronted with this, Mark's demeanor changed. He stopped denying he had seen Daniel before his death. But then came the twist. Mark's shocking confession. Under pressure, Mark finally admitted, "Yes, I was there. Yes, we argued. But I swear to God, I didn't kill him." Mark confessed that he had threatened Daniel, but he left before anything happened. He even provided proof, an alibi for the time of the murder. That meant he wasn't the killer. So why was he arrested? Because the police needed someone to blame. A deeper conspiracy? Despite the arrest, detectives weren't satisfied. Something didn't add up. Mark was guilty of fraud, but was he really a murderer? Or was he just a perfect scapegoat, while the real killer remained in the shadows, watching as the police chased the wrong man? And the most chilling thought of all, was someone inside the investigation helping cover the real killer's tracks? As the investigation deepened, the focus shifted to someone no one had suspected before, a person Daniel Carter had trusted, a friend, Ethan Reynolds, a private investigator, a man who had worked with Daniel in the past. The same man Daniel had called minutes before his death, desperately warning, "They're coming for me." Was Ethan just an unfortunate witness, or had he been part of something far more sinister? The hidden connection. Ethan had known Daniel for years, but detectives discovered something disturbing. Ethan had lied about the last time he saw Daniel. Phone records showed multiple calls between them in the weeks leading up to the murder. Ethan had claimed they were casual, but Daniel's emails told a different story. One email, sent just 3 days before his death, read, "I found something. I need to know if I can trust you. Call me. Urgent. A friend or a double-crosser." Ethan had told investigators he barely knew anything about Daniel's recent activities. But a deep dive into his financial records revealed an unexpected large deposit made into his account just 2 weeks before Daniel's murder. Where did the money come from? When confronted, Ethan's carefully constructed story started to fall apart. His hands trembled. He hesitated. And then he made a crucial mistake. He knew details about the murder that had never been released to the public. Was Ethan the killer? Or just another pawn? Ethan swore he wasn't the murderer. I was trying to protect him, he claimed. I told him to leave town, but he wouldn't listen. But if Ethan wasn't the one who killed Daniel, then who was? Was he just another loose end being tied up? Or had he been working with the real killer all along? One thing was certain, Daniel's murder wasn't random. It was planned, and Ethan knew more than he was admitting. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, investigators, and the public all gathered, waiting for the trial that promised to uncover the truth behind Daniel Carter's murder. The prosecution was confident. Their prime suspect, Ethan Reynolds, had been caught in a web of lies. His connection to Daniel, the deleted calls, the suspicious money transfer, and his inside knowledge of the crime all pointed to his guilt. But just as the case seemed airtight, the defense dropped a bombshell. A shocking twist in court. Ethan's lawyer stood up and presented new evidence, something the prosecution had never expected. A classified document, a file taken directly from Daniel Carter's hidden study. The document revealed a network of illegal financial dealings, corporate fraud, and high-profile figures who would do anything to keep their secrets buried. And the biggest shock? One of those names belonged to a powerful figure inside the investigation itself. Gasps filled the courtroom. The prosecution scrambled to object, but the judge allowed the document as evidence. The revelation sent waves of chaos through the trial. Had the case been manipulated from the very start? Had the police arrested the wrong man on purpose? To protect someone bigger? An unexpected confession. As tensions rose, Ethan broke his silence. He stood up, his voice shaking. I didn't kill Daniel, but I know who did. The room fell silent. The judge ordered him to explain. Ethan looked around, his gaze stopping at one man sitting at the prosecution's table. A man who had led the investigation from day one. Detective Robert Hayes was the real killer inside the investigation. The very detective assigned to solve Daniel's murder had been hiding crucial evidence all along. But why? Had he been paid to cover up the truth? Was he working for the real masterminds behind the crime? The courtroom erupted. Journalists rushed to report the shocking turn of events. Ethan's fate was still uncertain, but one thing was clear. Daniel Carter's murder wasn't just a personal vendetta. It was part of something much, much bigger. And now, the real conspiracy was finally coming to light. Just when everyone thought they had uncovered the truth, a final twist shattered everything they believed. The trial had exposed corruption, deceit, and hidden forces at play. But one question remained unanswered. Who actually killed Daniel Carter? The prosecution had been so focused on Ethan Reynolds that they had overlooked the most dangerous person in the entire case. The real killer, a name no one expected. The forensic team, working tirelessly behind the scenes, had re-examined every piece of evidence. One small but critical mistake had been overlooked until now. In Daniel's apartment, inside the hidden drawer where he kept classified documents, there was a partial fingerprint. It didn't match Ethan. It didn't match Mark Holloway. It didn't match any of the usual suspects. When the results came in, the courtroom froze. The killer was Olivia Bennett, the betrayal that no one saw coming. Olivia, the former colleague, the woman who had claimed Daniel was paranoid, the one who had met him just days before his murder, pretending to be concerned. The truth? She wasn't just another former co-worker. She was deeply involved in the same financial conspiracy Daniel had uncovered. Why did she kill him? For years, Olivia had worked as an informant for a secret group covering up fraudulent financial operations. When Daniel started digging into the past, she was sent to keep an eye on him, but he got too close. Daniel had found proof that could expose powerful figures. including some who still held influence in major financial circles. Olivia had gained his trust, watched him, waited for the right moment, then eliminated him before he could go public. The night of the murder. On the night of the murder, Olivia entered Daniel's apartment under the pretense of talking things through. Surveillance footage had been deliberately altered to erase her presence. She used a fast-acting, untraceable poison, ensuring there were no visible wounds, no signs of struggle. Before leaving, she deleted Daniel's last call and wiped down every surface, except for that one fingerprint. The final act. As the evidence was presented, Olivia's mask shattered. At first, she denied everything, but when confronted with the forensic proof, her expression changed. She smirked. Then she leaned forward and whispered, "Do you really think Daniel was the only one who knew?" Her words sent a chilling realization through the courtroom. This wasn't just a murder. It was a warning. And the people behind it? They weren't done yet. How was the murder committed? Daniel Carter's death was unlike any ordinary murder. There was no struggle, no wounds, no forced entry. Yet, he was dead. The method used was silent, undetectable, and carefully planned. The killer's strategy, precision and deception. Olivia Bennett, the woman Daniel trusted, had been assigned to monitor him, manipulate him, and ultimately silence him. When she realized that Daniel had found proof that could expose the hidden forces behind the financial conspiracy, she knew she had to act fast. She didn't want it to look like a murder. It had to be perfectly clean, perfectly untraceable. The poison, a death without a trace. Forensics later confirmed that Daniel had been poisoned, but not with any ordinary substance. The toxicology report found traces of tetrodotoxin, a highly potent neurotoxin found in certain species of pufferfish. In controlled doses, it paralyzes a victim, causing muscle failure while keeping the mind fully aware, a waking death. This meant Daniel felt everything. He knew he was dying, but he couldn't scream. He couldn't move. The killer watched as he struggled to breathe, his body shutting down within minutes. Once she was sure he was gone, Olivia carefully wiped down all evidence, deleted the last call from his phone, and locked the apartment behind her. Why was Daniel killed? Daniel was close to exposing something much bigger than just a financial fraud case. He had uncovered a hidden network, people in high places who would do anything to keep their secrets buried. He had written emails. He had gathered documents. He was planning to go public. And that's why he had to die. The ultimate cover-up. The murder was made to look like a natural death. No wounds, no struggle, no obvious cause. Even the toxicology test almost missed the poison, as it breaks down quickly in the bloodstream. If not for a microscopic trace left on Daniel's sleeve, the truth might have never been discovered. The message was clear. Speak the truth and you won't live to tell it. But Daniel had already left behind clues. Clues that would haunt his killers long after he was gone. The victim's last clue, the one mistake that exposed the killer. Daniel Carter might not have survived, but he wasn't entirely silenced. Before his death, he left behind something. A hidden clue, a final message that would lead investigators to the truth. The killers had planned everything perfectly. No forced entry, no obvious signs of struggle, a poison that left almost no trace. But they overlooked one thing, the bloodstained note, a silent cry for justice. While examining Daniel's study, forensic experts discovered a torn piece of paper wedged inside the back cover of a book on his desk. It was nearly invisible, hidden in plain sight. On it, written shakily in Daniel's own handwriting, were 3 words. Olivia knows everything. The ink was smudged, as if written in a hurry, or by someone whose body was already failing. Forensics confirmed that the tiny smears of blood on the corner of the paper matched Daniel's DNA. This meant that he had written it while he was dying. Daniel had fought against time to leave one final message. How did he do it? As the poison began paralyzing his muscles, Daniel must have realized what was happening. He couldn't call for help. He couldn't move freely. But he could still write. With the last of his strength, he grabbed a pen and scribbled down the only clue he had time to leave. The name of the person responsible. The one mistake that led to Olivia's downfall. When confronted with the note, Olivia tried to deny everything. That could mean anything. Maybe he was warning me about someone else. But then, investigators revealed something she wasn't expecting. The torn edge of Daniel's note perfectly matched a missing piece from a notepad in her own apartment. She had been there when he wrote it. She had seen him struggle, and she had thought she had erased every trace. But Daniel had outplayed her, even in death. Justice from beyond the grave. This single note sealed Olivia's fate. She hadn't just been exposed. She had been betrayed by the very man she tried to silence. Daniel Carter's last message proved one thing. The truth can be hidden, twisted, and covered up, but it can never be erased. A secret buried for years. Will the killer finally face justice? The case against Olivia Bennett was now undeniable. Daniel Carter's final message, the forensic evidence, and the unraveling of the conspiracy had left her with nowhere to hide. But there was still one unanswered question. Was Olivia really the mastermind, or just another pawn in a much bigger game? The truth that had been hidden for years. As investigators dug deeper, they found that Daniel's murder wasn't just about revenge or silencing a whistleblower. It was part of a larger cover-up, one that had been in motion for nearly a decade. Years ago, when Daniel had exposed corporate fraud, he had unknowingly stepped into something far bigger than financial corruption. He had uncovered a secret network, a group operating in the shadows, manipulating business deals, controlling information, and eliminating threats. And Olivia? She wasn't just a former colleague. She had been part of it all along. The financial fraud case that had forced Daniel into hiding was never closed. The real players had never been caught. Olivia had been protecting them, ensuring that Daniel's knowledge never saw the light of day. But Daniel had been careful. He had left behind more than just a note. Before his death, he had secretly stored encrypted files containing proof. Proof that implicated not just Olivia, but others who were still operating behind the scenes. When the files were finally decrypted, they exposed a list of names, powerful individuals who had been untouchable for years. Will Olivia pay for her crimes? As the evidence mounted, Olivia finally broke. In a dramatic courtroom moment, she agreed to confess on one condition. I'll tell you everything, but I want protection. Because if I talk, they'll come for me next. She wasn't afraid of prison. She was afraid of the people she had worked for, the ones who had orchestrated Daniel's murder. The deal was granted. Olivia revealed everything, giving authorities enough evidence to bring down multiple figures involved in the years-old conspiracy. Justice served, or just the beginning. Olivia was sentenced to life in prison. But as she was led away, she gave one final chilling statement. You think this is over? You don't even know who you're really up against. And just like that, the mystery that had begun with one murder in a locked room had opened the door to something much, much bigger. Daniel Carter had finally received justice. But somewhere in the shadows, the real masterminds were still watching. The killer's confession, a chilling truth that shocked the police. Sitting across from detectives in the dimly lit interrogation room, Olivia Bennett finally broke her silence. She had been caught, exposed, and cornered. There was no escape now. With cold, unwavering eyes, she leaned forward and whispered, You think you've solved it, don't you? You think you finally have the truth? Detectives exchanged uneasy glances. They had gathered overwhelming evidence against her. They had the handwritten note from Daniel, the tampered CCTV footage, the financial transactions, and even her own DNA inside the crime scene. Yet, she was smiling. And then she confessed. I killed him, but not because I wanted to. Olivia admitted to poisoning Daniel Carter. She detailed every step. How she entered his apartment, how she laced his drink with the deadly neurotoxin, and how she watched him struggle in silence, unable to move, unable to scream. She even admitted to staying in the apartment for several minutes after he died, making sure there were no mistakes. He wasn't supposed to find out the truth, she murmured. He wasn't supposed to dig that deep. But Daniel, he never knew when to stop. But then, she dropped a bombshell that made the detective's blood run cold. You're chasing the wrong people. You think I did this alone? Olivia laughed softly, shaking her head. You have no idea who's really in control. She refused to give names, but hinted that Daniel's murder was just one piece of a much larger operation. She hadn't killed him out of personal revenge. She had been ordered to do it by someone more powerful, more dangerous. If I didn't do it, she said, leaning back with a smirk, I'd be the one lying dead in that room instead of Daniel. A crime that wasn't supposed to be solved. The confession sent shockwaves through the investigation. This wasn't just a murder. It was an execution. Daniel Carter had uncovered something so dangerous, so deeply buried, that even those who carried out the crime were just pawns in a much bigger game. And Olivia? She had played her part. She had killed a man who knew too much. But now, she knew too much as well. As she was led away in handcuffs, she turned back one last time and delivered a final, chilling warning. This doesn't end with me. You're not stopping anything. You're just waking them up. And just like that, Olivia Bennett, the murderer, the insider, the pawn, was gone. But the real masterminds, they were still out there, watching, waiting. Case closed or just the beginning? With Olivia Bennett's confession, the case was officially closed. The evidence was overwhelming. The court found her guilty of first-degree murder, and she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Justice had been served, or so it seemed, but for the detectives who had spent months untangling the truth, something didn't feel right. The loose ends that couldn't be ignored. Even with Olivia behind bars, too many questions remained unanswered. Who gave the order? Olivia had admitted to the murder, but she never revealed who had told her to do it. What was Daniel about to expose? The documents he had uncovered hinted at something much larger than financial fraud. Something worth killing for. Why was the CCTV footage erased with such precision? Olivia was intelligent, but not a hacker. Someone else had ensured there were no witnesses. A final twist no one saw coming. 2 weeks after Olivia's conviction, something happened that shocked the investigators. Late one night, a prison guard found Olivia Bennett dead in her cell. No signs of struggle, no suicide note, just a blank expression frozen on her face. And inside her clenched fist, a small slip of paper. On it, written in barely legible handwriting, were 2 words. Not over. Was this really justice? Daniel Carter had been silenced. Now, Olivia Bennett was gone too. Who was cleaning up loose ends? Who was still out there, making sure the real truth never came to light? The police had closed the case. But for those who had been part of the investigation, one thing was now terrifyingly clear. This wasn't justice. This was just another cover-up. And somewhere, in the shadows, the real game was just beginning. A secret buried for years. Will the killer finally face justice? The case against Olivia Bennett was now undeniable. Daniel Carter's final message, the forensic evidence, and the unraveling of the conspiracy had left her with nowhere to hide. But there was still one unanswered question. Was Olivia really the mastermind, or just another pawn in a much bigger game? The truth that had been hidden for years. As investigators dug deeper, they found that Daniel's murder wasn't just about revenge or silencing a whistleblower. It was part of a larger cover-up, one that had been in motion for nearly a decade. Years ago, when Daniel had exposed corporate fraud, he had unknowingly stepped into something far bigger than financial corruption. He had uncovered a secret network, a group operating in the shadows, manipulating business deals, controlling information, and eliminating threats. And Olivia? She wasn't just a former colleague. She had been part of it all along. The financial fraud case that had forced Daniel into hiding was never closed. The real players had never been caught. Olivia had been protecting them, ensuring that Daniel's knowledge never saw the light of day. But Daniel had been careful. He had left behind more than just a note. Before his death, he had secretly stored encrypted files containing proof. Proof that implicated not just Olivia, but others who were still operating behind the scenes. When the files were finally decrypted, they exposed a list of names, powerful individuals who had been untouchable for years. Will Olivia pay for her crimes? As the evidence mounted, Olivia finally broke. In a dramatic courtroom moment, she agreed to confess on one condition. I'll tell you everything, but I want protection. Because if I talk, they'll come for me next. She wasn't afraid of prison. She was afraid of the people she had worked for, the ones who had orchestrated Daniel's murder. The deal was granted. Olivia revealed everything, giving authorities enough evidence to bring down multiple figures involved in the years-old conspiracy. Justice served, or just the beginning. Olivia was sentenced to life in prison, but as she was led away, she gave one final chilling statement. You think this is over? You don't even know who you're really up against. And just like that, the mystery that had begun with one murder in a locked room had opened the door to something much, much bigger. Daniel Carter had finally received justice. But somewhere in the shadows, the real masterminds were still watching. The killer's confession, a chilling truth that shocked the police. Sitting across from detectives in the dimly lit interrogation room, Olivia Bennett finally broke her silence. She had been caught, exposed, and cornered. There was no escape now. With cold, unwavering eyes, she leaned forward and whispered, "You think you've solved it, don't you? You think you finally have the truth?" Detectives exchanged uneasy glances. They had gathered overwhelming evidence against her. They had the handwritten note from Daniel, the tampered CCTV footage, the financial transactions, and even her own DNA inside the crime scene. Yet, she was smiling. And then she confessed. "I killed him, but not because I wanted to." Olivia admitted to poisoning Daniel Carter. She detailed every step. How she entered his apartment, how she laced his drink with the deadly neurotoxin, and how she watched him struggle in silence, unable to move, unable to scream. She even admitted to staying in the apartment for several minutes after he died, making sure there were no mistakes. He wasn't supposed to find out the truth, she murmured. He wasn't supposed to dig that deep. But Daniel, he never knew when to stop. But then, she dropped a bombshell that made the detective's blood run cold. "You're chasing the wrong people. You think I did this alone?" Olivia laughed softly, shaking her head. "You have no idea who's really in control." She refused to give names, but hinted that Daniel's murder was just one piece of a much larger operation. She hadn't killed him out of personal revenge. She had been ordered to do it, by someone more powerful, more dangerous. "If I didn't do it," she said, leaning back with a smirk, "I'd be the one lying dead in that room instead of Daniel." A crime that wasn't supposed to be solved. The confession sent shockwaves through the investigation. This wasn't just a murder. It was an execution. Daniel Carter had uncovered something so dangerous, so deeply buried, that even those who carried out the crime were just pawns in a much bigger game. And Olivia? She had played her part. She had killed a man who knew too much. But now, she knew too much as well. As she was led away in handcuffs, she turned back one last time and delivered a final, chilling warning. "This doesn't end with me. You're not stopping anything. You're just waking them up." And just like that, Olivia Bennett, the murderer, the insider, the pawn, was gone. But the real masterminds, they were still out there, watching, waiting. Case closed or just the beginning? With Olivia Bennett's confession, the case was officially closed. The evidence was overwhelming. The court found her guilty of first-degree murder, and she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Justice had been served, or so it seemed, but for the detectives who had spent months untangling the truth, something didn't feel right. The loose ends that couldn't be ignored. Even with Olivia behind bars, too many questions remained unanswered. Who gave the order? Olivia had admitted to the murder, but she never revealed who had told her to do it. What was Daniel about to expose? The documents he had uncovered hinted at something much larger than financial fraud. Something worth killing for. Why was the CCTV footage erased with such precision? Olivia was intelligent, but not a hacker. Someone else had ensured there were no witnesses. A final twist no one saw coming. 2 weeks after Olivia's conviction, something happened that shocked the investigators. Late one night, a prison guard found Olivia Bennett dead in her cell. No signs of struggle, no suicide note, just a blank expression frozen on her face. And inside her clenched fist, a small slip of paper. On it, written in barely legible handwriting, were 2 words. Not over. Was this really justice? Daniel Carter had been silenced. Now, Olivia Bennett was gone too. Who was cleaning up loose ends? Who was still out there, making sure the real truth never came to light? The police had closed the case. But for those who had been part of the investigation, one thing was now terrifyingly clear. This wasn't justice. This was just another cover-up. And somewhere, in the shadows, the real game was just beginning. The end, or just another beginning. Daniel Carter's murder had seemed like just another crime, a case to be solved, justice to be served. But in the end, what had truly been uncovered? Yes, Olivia Bennett was arrested. Yes, she confessed. But before she could reveal the names of those who had truly been pulling the strings, she was silenced, just like Daniel. It wasn't justice. It was a message that no matter how deep the truth is buried, someone will always be watching. Someone will always make sure it never sees the light of day. But what about you? If there's one lesson to take from this case, it's this: the truth is never simple. And sometimes, the real danger isn't just the crime itself. It's the forces working to keep the truth hidden. What can we learn? This story reminds us that powerful people will go to any lengths to protect their secrets. Sometimes, justice is not what it seems. Sometimes, the case may be closed on paper, but in reality, the real mystery remains unsolved. Do you believe the truth always comes out? Or do you think some things are meant to stay buried forever? Your turn. Red, circle what do you think really happened. Was Olivia just a pawn, or was she part of something bigger? Share your thoughts in the comments. Red, circle want more stories like this? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a mystery. Red, circle what case should we cover next? Suggest an unsolved mystery or crime story in the comments. We might feature your idea in our next video. Because in the end, the truth is out there. The question is, are you ready to find it?